Yo, what is good, guys? It's your boy Miklik. Welcome back to another Haikyu Fly video. And in today's video, we'll be talking about the 3 new SSR units that will be coming out next week. I don't know exactly what day, but it's just coming out next week, Wednesday or Thursday. Probably Wednesday. But either way, Haruki, Tim the Tatman, and Kono will be the new 3 SSRs. That was already told to us in the announcement thing. So realistically, out of these 3, since the Fukurodani, believe it or not, you actually don't need these 3 at all. Unless you want to pick Fukurodani or you have Bokuto. And even if you do have Bokuto, you don't even need these 3 because the Fukurodani team synergy is just as soon as the match starts, instantly 20 team morale, and that's it. You can literally just sub out after that, and then boom. So that's why you don't actually need these 3. But if we're talking about now, then I guess the only major player here is essentially Kono, because he's the only one that can actually help give team morale other than Tinder, Tam, and Haruki, because Haruki literally takes away morale from the opposing team, has nothing to do with the Fukurodani team in general. And then Tinder Tam, he's literally just a basic middle blocker, and unless you're going to use him, you need to get his S2 for Bokuto, because that's when he can gain team morale. But apart from that, he's just a basic middle blocker that could be outclassed by any other SSR middle blocker. So it's just not worth it. But I want to go ahead and talk about Haruki first, because first of all, he's probably the worst SSR liberal or just liberal in general. His skills, as I said earlier, it only takes away team morale. Obviously, he gets percentages for his receive, and depending on the result, it still only decreases morale for the opposing team. And then when we check his skill 2, it's probably one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life, where if the result of the play is not bad, the main stats of allies are increased by 5 to 8%, which sounds good on paper until you realize it only lasts for 1 net crossing. So as long as it's 1 net crossing, you're fucked. And obviously, like most of the receive players in this game, we can't guarantee who's gonna receive what. So skill 2, in my opinion, is the worst part of his kit, even though it increases all of the allies' main stats by, so on and so on. It just doesn't even last long. And apart from that, skill 3 is skill 4 is just basic stat enhancements that you could get from any other libero, and especially with memories and stuff like that. And if you're asking if I could still use Haruki and Fukurodani, unless you're a big Fukurodani fan, sure. But apart from that, it's not worth it at all. Matter of fact, Akagi is the best libero for Bokuto, because first of all, even though this isn't a video about talking about Akagi, I'll let you guys read this along with the website, but he does give very good debuffs. He does give morale with his skill 1, where increases Akagi's receive and save by so on, so on, and so on, and increases team morale by 10 when Akagi receives or saves. And this is a huge boost for Bokuto anyways, because again, you're at least going to guarantee at least a few receives. Unlike Haruki, when obviously you could still guarantee a few receives, but even so, the stats only last for 1 net crossing, so it just goes down the drain anyways. But you could at least pocket some team morale into skill 1 for Bokuto, and it's just good even if you don't have Bokuto, because team morale is team morale. And for skill 2, he literally increases defense technique, and it lasts for 6 net crossings, not 1 net crossing, so it's a bonus. Theoretically, the only downside you could say he has, which is honestly, I guess, crucial, is that he relies on the opposing team being a power attack. So if your opposing team is not power attack and if it's quick attack, his skill 3 won't actually do much, because again, it just decreases power attacks and it doesn't actually decrease quick attack. Unlike Yaku, obviously he doesn't decrease any quick attack. He actually thrives in quick attack teams, where he boosts quick attack, and you could actually manage around quick attack teams because you're not going to rely on the opposing team on what they have, since you're building your own team, which is why it's very situational. And especially Yaku, since he has this very amazing skill 3, where as long as his receive is normal, it changes straight into perfect, which obviously pairs well for Akashi, because as we know, if an ally's receive or block is perfect, all of the allies' adverse effects are reset, and Akashi's awareness increases by 8%. All allies team morale increases by 3. But apart from that, I think Akagi is the best libero for Bokuto, just for team morale. And even if it's not for team morale, when you're going against a power attack team, it's probably one of the best SSR liberos in the game when it comes to a certain aspect. And plus, a lot of people got Maya Twins, so getting Akagi here is a very good choice. And obviously, Akagi isn't coming out, and I'm going to stop talking about him now. Now that we're done glazing Akagi, we could go for Tinder Tatman. And Tinder Tatman, he's just a basic middle blocker that could be outclassed by any other middle blocker, especially if you have Tsukishima. But essentially, his skill 1, if his block result isn't bad, then he just increases the block stats power, and the next time he blocks. And then his skill 2 just quick attack. And his skill 3 is actually pretty good, because if your opposing team member makes a critical play, then his block and quick attack will be increased, which is probably the best thing in his kit. And then his skill 4 is just another block percentage for the attack power. So he's just basic stuff. There's nothing much to talk about other than his skill res 2. So essentially, whenever he scores, he will increase team morale by 10. But that's when he scores, so that's why it's a little bit iffy on his skill res too, because most of the time you're just not gonna score with a middle blocker unless we're talking about the future no position limit. So other than that, it's unlikely for him to score anyways. And I guess the only good part is that as long as he's in Team Morale Awakening, his block is increased by 5% when an ally scores up to 3 stacks. But in general, it's just alright. If you do get a skill res too, I guess it's fine to have him on your team, but even so, I just don't recommend it as much. Again, I know a lot of you guys are gonna say In JP, they run the Fukurodani team, but in JP, it's not actually an accurate source to compare your teams to. It's actually Taiwan, because in JP, they didn't know what was coming next. They didn't have as much leaks as we do, and even if they did, they didn't know most of the skills, so it was just a gamble between what they were gonna get. And then for Taiwan, they know what was coming up, they know who was meta, they know what to do, so they could just prepare themselves. And also, banners are different. Taiwan had more chances to dupe out their SPs, while JP finally got their first ever SP rerun, which was Hinata, and that tells you a lot. So if you ever want to compare your team, it's just gonna have to be in Taiwan. And JP, I'm pretty sure, is actually not even that competitive, so use what I said in your own regards. But yes, for Tinataman, I just don't think he's worth it, I'll be honest with you. But realistically, I won't even bother to get him, and if I do want to run Fukurodani, he will have to be substituted in the beginning of the game just so he could get the team morale if he ever runs like the full Fukurodani synergy. So I could sub him out in the beginning so I could start off strong with 20 morale for Bokuto, and then that's about it. I could sub him out for any other middle blocker, but apart from that, it's just not worth it. And also for Kono here, he's probably the only Fukurodani member you could get for team morale out of these three, because first of all, his skill 4 already gives you 20 morale as long as you just make a receive. That's not bad. And I know you guys are gonna say it compares a lot to Haruki and the other liberals where they have to make a receive. That's not bad sometimes. Yes, that's true, but as I said, depending on the skills, like for this one night crossing isn't gonna do much. You're at least gonna guarantee yourself 2 to 3 receives depending on literally what happens during the game in a 5-point game. So that's why I say his skill 4 is actually pretty handy for Bokuto. And even so, he could honestly be run without the Fukurodani or just Bokuto, because for his skill 3, and since he's a support player, because as long as he's on the front row, the block and a power attack, his quick attack of all allies in the front row is increased by 8 to 12%. And if he's in the back row, the receive and save of all of your players in the back row is increased by 8 to 10 to 12%. And this skill is probably the only skill that can make him go outside of Fukurodani. But even so, you won't see him outside of Fukurodani, because most of the time you're not even going to use the opposite hitter as a support, unless it's Daichi, because Daichi literally outmogs Kono when it comes to supporting. So you'd rather just use Daichi, and he's completely free to play. And if you're going for Kono, I would honestly say Skill Rest 2 will outclass Skill Rest 4, even though Skill Rest 4 is technically game changing for Bokuto, because when the receive is not bad, the play will not consume any duration of Team Morale Awakening, making Team Morale Awakening last longer. And even though it's good on paper, Bokuto will have his Team Morale Awakening quite frequently just because of himself with Akashi, and if you have Kono. And also, I would just stick with Skill Rest 2, because first of all, if you combine it with Akashi, it will be very important because it increases awareness, which you would need for the critical set to guarantee that critical spike, and it's just useful in general. And now that we're on to the lineup part of the video, this will be the lineup I would technically recommend if you're going for the Fukurodani side. You have Kono, Akashi, and Bokuto here with Tinataman on the bench. And the reason why Tinataman's on the bench is just a substitute in the beginning where you have Tinataman in here, and then you sub out just for the Fukurodani team synergy 20 morale in the beginning. And honestly, unless you're very on the Fukurodani fan side, or you're pay to win, which if that was the case, you would probably not have Kono here. Anyway, you probably just have Ushijima there, let's be real. But either way, I wouldn't even recommend getting Tinataman, because with or without the Fukurodani team synergy, it's like you're playing without it anyways, because it's only the beginning of the match. So there's no point. And honestly, you're just wasting purple tickets because you're not even going to use it in the time, man. It's not like you have to invest resources in him, but it's the fact that you're going to have to pull with your purple tickets, which you just don't want to do for something pointless like that. So this will technically be it. And obviously, you might not have Hinata, you might not have Akashi. I don't know what you have. This is why I honestly dislike making lineup videos, because I can't control what you have. I don't know what you have. It's just very confusing because you might have Ushijima, and if you do have Ushijima, well, this video is just completely pointless to Kono because you won't even want to run Kono anyways. Ushijima will do perfectly fine here, especially if you're paid to win. It's like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? You can have literally Oikawa here and anything, but considering the fact that it's technically a free-to-play video and at the same time tips and tricks, I'll keep Akashi here for the Fukurodani team synergy since it's technically a Fukurodani video anyways. So we'll go back to the regular stuff again here, and we just have a basic technically free-to-play team that could happen with Korra and Hirogami. And Akagi is here, as I already mentioned, a team morale, and is just a very good libero in general. With Akashi here, having his critical set guarantee a critical spike for Hinata, especially if Hinata could be max duped. But some people might have Hinata on base anyways, so it's just good to have Hinata. And the real reason Hinata is here is because in my previous videos, as I state, I'm not actually a big fan of Kono when it comes to support. Because first of all, in a main game, you do not want to have only 2 wing spikers. For example, if Hinata was just a middle blocker, right? You only have essentially 2 wing spikers that could do maximum output. And then apart from that, it's cooked. Because then, obviously, you could use, you know, the middle blocker to spike, Hirogami to spike, and Kono to spike, and Akashi set them, right? But it's just not as optimal. And the only reason why you want to use these is when it's last hope and last stand. So this is why Hinata is here. So it'll be a good backup for Kono, especially since Kono is essentially like a blocker and obviously again a support, so it'll be perfectly fine with this. And if there's a point where you want to make Bokuto your main attacker, which would mean what I said in the beginning, where you just have this and you only have 2 wing spikers, you would need Bokuro on his S4, or else it's complete murder for the team. Because if you don't have Bokuro on S4, as I said again, it just won't be optimal. You're only gonna have 2 wing spikers, and Bokuro is here the only one that can ultimate spam if he has his S4. So if he has his S4, it will work good like this. Obviously, you don't need one man. It could be literally on any other middle blocker. But essentially, if Bokuro is your main attacker, you would want him an S4 right here. So you could literally maximize the output for being the main attacker. And believe it or not, same goes for SP Bokuro, because SP Bokuro actually starts off in emo mode. So you instantly start off with no spiking ability in the beginning, because you won't want to use SP Bokuro spikes to the maximum. So it's just not going to be as optimal. This is why if you were to have this, you would always need a wing spiker anyways. And in the future, you would probably just want to get any other guy. Like for example, you have Mad Dog here, honestly, that could cover for him. You could honestly have Ushijima if you were paid to win. And then this is where you could freely take out the middle blocker and have your own middle blocker right there. And then boom, it would work just fine there. Obviously, then it upgrades into SP Akashi and then SP Wallman. And then, you know, just he literally disappears from the radar and then goes into like essentially this. Let me make this look a little better. This is why no matter what happens, depending on who you have right here, Kono won't be the most viable option. It would technically be the first SSR to go, so it'll literally be like this in the beginning. If you have SP Bokuro, you just won't want Kono. Obviously, it'll work fine with Kono here. It's not like it'll be complete shit. It'll work just fine. You just have to maximize Bokuro SP's basic spikes so you can grant extra buffs. But apart from that, it's always optimal to have Ushijima or Mad Dog, like I keep explaining in every Bokuro lineup video. This should essentially be my optimal lineup if Bokuro is not an S4. So do what you will with this information. Obviously, in the no position limit, it will literally look like this, and then, you know, everything just changes. So this is why making lineups is a little confusing now. So do what you will here. As everyone knows, a new setter will come, which is going to be Optimal SP Freaky Holiday. So, you know, you're probably going to save it for this guy anyways. Take this into consideration. Obviously, don't have to listen to Hinata here, because not everyone has Hinata. So you could literally just go back to running your regular lineup that you have with Tsukishima, and it'll work just fine, honestly. The lineup I just showed was technically the most optimal way, which is kind of cringe, but either way, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, join the Discord, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.